I'm Maria Tsennykh, and welcome to Catching Fraud and Valuation Miscalculation, where finance meets fraud prevention. I'm here to share the art and science behind fraud prevention, forensic accounting, and valuation, giving you innovative strategies to outsmart financial crime, manage risk effectively, and maximize your value ethically. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is a new podcast, and today I will be presenting myself. My name is Maria Tsennykh. I'm the founder and managing partner of TSENU Consulting. I'm based in New York, London. Today, I wanted to speak about specifically the divorce settings, the matrimonial expertise when you potentially hire an expert, or you would want to think about if everything works well in your marriage, but then potentially what in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, if something really goes wrong, what do you really need to know? What kind of records do you need from the sort of the secrets and best tips from a forensic accountant? Recently, I worked on some of the projects within matrimonial settings. Again, my background is 20 years in audit, finance, valuation, forensic accounting, globally and locally, including PwC, 11 years globally in Europe and in New York, and also FTI Consulting. I'm a PhD economist and a chartered accountant in the UK. And I do work with clients, individuals and corporates, high net worth individuals, globally, locally, helping to prepare for the divorce or just consult what that could be if the party decides to go into the divorce. So, a few tips, and before we go into the details of that, number one, if you ask any forensic accountant, what do I need to think about? Again, we're speaking about here the hypothetical situation that everything is well in the marriage, but you just want to just be good in terms of we track our records for we want to make sure we're stay on top of everything in life, our taxes, our I don't know, like how we take care of our finances overall, what are our expenses, what are our budgets. I do believe as a forensic accountant, I wish I could consult all clients who come to me already kind of too late, but I try to help as much as possible and to be as creative as possible in a good way, thinking of ways to help. But what if my hypothetical client, as of now, could think about if something really negative happens and the divorce is a possibility in 10 years, what to prepare about? Number one is definitely keep your records. And we're speaking about definitely not like keeping a record that you spend $5 on I don't know, coffee, although it's even the latte is more expensive in New York right now. But it's more about the timeline of records. Usually, what banks can provide, it depends on the jurisdiction, local, global, 7 years, 5 years, depending on the country we're speaking about. But again, there's that only so much, many years that you can really track and take a look from the banking records, from your credit cards, from your checking accounts, from anything that the bank can provide. When we go early than that, usually that's a gray space where we have maybe a few examples of those saved receipts of something, but it's not like a full cash in, cash out, bank statements, not really available. We definitely work with whatever is available, but that's something I will say. Number one is make sure you keep at least yearly annual bank statements where it shows how much was the balance in, the balance out. That shows a large cash in, cash out. If you know that during certain period of time, say 15 years ago, something, well, as of now, if now is 15 years ago from that 15 years after today, you spend significant amount on something, keep that bank statement where it shows what it was, when it happened, and that it is recorded on the bank statement. You don't have to keep all your bank statements. You don't have to keep all your records, but those ones that are most beneficial, again, in the best case scenario, nothing negative happens and the marriage survives, everything works. But again, we're speaking about hypothetical negative situation. Also, it is important not only to think about checking accounts, saving accounts, credit cards, but it's also investment accounts. Basically, any account, anything within the ecosystem, how much you spend, how much you earn, how much are inflows. Basically, it's again cash in, cash out. That's the golden rule because how much cash was deposited or withdrawn, that's something we can work with. As a forensic accountant, I always say, give me the framework, give me the outline, legal framework, what I have to work with, and I just tell the story with numbers. But once I have those numbers, it's also important to have the proof of that, right? Tip number two is as of the marriage date, right before or after the shorter period of time to the actual marriage date of marriage, what will be on the marriage certificate, what is the closest bank statements? Just save them. For sake of you never know, keep them forever. What was at every single account, which was a separate account before any investment, what was the value of your investment property, what was the value of your investment accounts, what was the actual cash balance of your savings accounts, list all of them, and then provide account bank statements saved in any way. It could be hard copy, it could be soft copy on the computer. I always hardly recommend to go very old school, keep the hardcore records because it's easier to scan them. I experienced many times when the client lost pretty much everything because of whatever, it was not good technology support, files were saved, but then were wiped out. Any way to save that file in electronic form can be potentially, ideally, it should be saved. There is a lot of information to and then support to help you never lose it. But again, I've witnessed a lot of loss in that regard. So the hard copy is usually the best. Then we're speaking about if you work with investment advisor, wealth advisor, anybody, definitely, hopefully you have great relationship with, but ideally, at least on the annual basis, ask what is the average performance rate for the year for the same type of investments or the portfolio? What is the average? So if you then have to calculate what would have been if you didn't marry and kind of like split the accounts between separate versus the common, and I'll speak a little bit later about the community property, community debt, depending on the state. But basically, it is important to just keep that track of if a forensic accountant needs to calculate the present value, future value of money, what would that be the return that's either in the future or in the past annually, at least average, that could be incorporated in that model? Again, number four is the large purchases, expenses, investments. I mentioned that already, but I just want to go a little bit more in depth. The examples of marital expenses together. How much was the actual wedding? How much was anything you bought together? Any purchases of houses? It could be luxury cars. I just speak from my clients' examples. It could be yachts. It could be luxury resort, very unique vacations together. I'm also speaking about potential opportunity. I don't know, something like investment in anywhere in globally, could be Western Europe, Africa, Central America, any country, including, I don't know, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, anywhere. So if you do invest, just keep those records of everything. Again, any purchase, examples could be plastic surgery. done. Usually it does have significant expense. Again, what is common, what is not common, because we normalize what is the average expense per year. What was usual? Was it one off, like once in 10 years, or is it like every year or twice a year? Number 5 is which accounts all those amounts were deposited. That's also very important to track. Most of the times, I do experience that there is an example of expense or expense support, but I couldn't find it on any bank statements. So it just is a standalone expense. I see the name, I see the amount, it's quite large, but like every single bank account would take a look, it's just non existent. I think this is important to just always bear in your mind. Okay, so this is the account where that $1,000 or 100,000 of dollars or 1 million of dollars. Well, with a million, probably you will notice, but still, like those large amounts, make sure you track that. But in the bank statements you keep, if you have the receipts supporting, know where they went to. Sometimes accounts they change. There's certain cancellations of accounts, there's closure of accounts. Some accounts, I do believe, at least in the past, if it's below certain level, it's below zero, that's negative. For a while, the bank closes it. So that's it. And then the expense was recorded. It happened. It's enough proof that it did happen, but we don't see any bank account where it went. Are you ready to protect your business from financial risk and fraud? My independent and global firm, TSENU Consulting, specializes in forensics, investigations, valuations, and litigation consulting. My mission is to help you identify and mitigate risks while maximizing your company's value. Whether you're a corporate executive, investor, or law firm, TSENU's expert approach provides rigorous, white-gloved deliverables tailored to your unique needs. With a strategic and global presence, TSENU Consulting is ready to become your trusted advisor. TSENU Consulting, where protecting value and preventing fraud is not just our business, it's our passion. Go to www.tsenu.global. And then number 6, it's what I already mentioned. It's the state rules. It is important to definitely know in which state you are in filing, where potentially the divorce can happen, or where do you live. It's definitely more of a legal question, but for forensic accountant, it is important because there are some states with a community out first, meaning that, for instance, any expense and any income happening during the matrimonial period, it is split in half. So then again, like it's just numbers. For us, once the lawyer tells us how we have to split in words, we do the numbers, but we don't do the numbers not understanding the legal framework. This is number 1. Like a forensic accountant can calculate pretty much anything from the numbers available, but the question mark is how to calculate that within the right environment. So that's something very, very important once you are getting into the marriage or you're already married. If you move somewhere, if something happens, again, know the legal environment. If the divorce has to happen, which state it potentially could be. And if you're going through the divorce, again, probably already know, but still, it is important. It will affect so much the calculation. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the value of money. And that's one of the most important for any calculations within the divorce settings for a forensic accountant. Again, we definitely do track certain assets. We understand and try to understand if there's something hidden, if we can find something in the account balances. We'll look through tax returns. We'll look through all available information. But the valuation professionals, which forensic accountants are actually within matrimonial settings, valuation professionals account for the time value of money on the principle that money available at present time is worth more than the same amount in the future due to its potential earning capacity. Again, a dollar now is always more than a dollar in the future. That's the basics of all the finance and the calculation. This core principle basically of finance holds that provided money can earn interest, any amount of money is worth more the sooner it is received, because there is an alternative use that you can potentially invest, could have invested, but didn't. So basically, there is a reduction of value of money in the future. Present value of money calculates and outlines how much a future amount of money is worth. Today, considering interest rate and the period at question. So again, we're speaking about the interest rate and the period. That's why, remember in the first tips, when I mentioned that number 3 tip, regularly speak with your wealth advisor, financial advisor, whomever it is. If you invest in something, you need to know what is the growth rates, what are the performance averages, because for us, we do look at the market, we do look at what's available in the market, but again, we're speaking about sometimes very long period of time. And if it's 15 years, if it's 20 years, it is very, very hard to pull the more precise number. So if you update that at least like once a year, even once in 2 years, as long as we have data points where we can recalculate, our model will be just more precise and easy to argue and to support. So again, we speak about period at question. Again, for the value of money, the interest rate and the period, the most important. But the period of time, it's during, imagine 20 years, you had at the beginning $10,000, you could have invested it in something else and you could have earned so much more or less, right? So, but it's a question mark. The longer period you have, the bigger change it is. So if we're speaking about half a year or a year, that's probably not that much unless there's like such a big fluctuation in rates. But if we speak about 20 years, it's definitely always a big question in the change in value, whatever we're looking at. Future value of money. Again, there is a present value. Speaking present value, it's always as of now or as of the report date when the forensic accountant is issuing. It's usually close to now, maybe a few days or maybe even within a month from now. But as of now, how much would that be? The future value is of money calculates how much a current amount of money will be worth in the future, considering, again, interest rate and period of time at question. So the future value, imagine that if you had $10,000 in the past, 15 years ago, that's the present value in the past. So the future value will be as of now. So again, it's always important to understand relative to what. Again, I'm going back to numbers they follow. The calculation is usually very straightforward and easy. For us, it's very important to understand the logic of when what happened. So if your $10,000 were 15 years ago on the account right before you married, you saved that balance statement, and then you're telling the forensic accountant to calculate how much would have been that amount if there would have been no marriage, then it's one question. Another example is like if a month ago from now, literally 2025, 10,000 were deposited, right? So then it's basically very close to now. Basically, if 2010 or 2007, 2008 is considered as now and the date of the report as the future, it is important to account for additional interest always, that the balance from 2007 or 2008 could have earned up until now. So that's pretty much what is really important, I find, in those matrimonial matters. Then I think here's like a little bit kind of like stepping back from the conversation about like the money and anything numbers wise, I always try to speak with the clients. Okay, so let's think about your life in general and just be very, very not only creative with like how you look at things, but it's also about have we forgotten about something? Our habits, our wealth, certain building, the accounts, how what happened, what was important 10 years ago, what is important now. We do not remember certain things. So again, when you do speak with a forensic accountant, whomever that is, just make sure that there is not only the numbers discussion before any number is calculated. Just make sure that you sort of guide the accountant, and the accountant, the forensic accountant, the valuation person can be very, very good at the calculation itself, as I mentioned, but to prepare that every single case is very unique. I have never seen the same exactly project, the same client. This is really, really crucial. You invest your time into the discussions with the accountant. Again, if possible, make sure that you have those conversations even before everything negative happens. Just maybe have an hour, 2 hours conversation as a consulting. It's like, hey, this is where I stand. What should I be thinking about? Then always look from the general to the specific. Look at the bigger picture, outline, literally draw that on a piece of paper or in Excel, anywhere. When you speak with the forensic accountant, guide this person in terms of here are all my expenses. What else should I potentially be thinking about? Why it is important? There are situations when certain things will be outlined, like a person, again, I mentioned, I don't know, like a yacht, right? Like, but there would be expenses of certain family members involved. There will be some additional income streams that were short term, but they were quite large during one period of time that did impact. Another example will be you spend on certain like beautification. A lot of ladies like, to invest certain into, as I already mentioned, it could be whatever it is, like starting with plastic surgery and finishing just like really great grooming and taking care about yourself and buying really expensive clothes and then shoes and bags. That's something that's usually forgotten very easily. But again, you have to look at your life as a bigger picture. If you had to, during period of time of say 20 years, to tell the forensic accountant where to dig into, because otherwise the forensic accountant will look at documents that is provided, right? So that is really, really crucial to make sure you have that support as well as guidance. Although a great professional, of course, like will ask a lot of questions about like, oh, did you invest in this? Did you invest in that? But sometimes like it's really hard to even think about in addition to what is common, right? And again, I can name like certain common expenses, right? Like spending time together or dinners at expensive restaurants. It could be fancy vacation. It could be just buying rental property somewhere, right? It could be like jewelry. I see a lot of jewelry purchases, for instance. But again, those jewelry purchases, they're usually one-offs and they're not really referring, or they're like usually during this short period. I do believe I highlighted pretty much everything, which is like hardcore basics. Again, number one, out of all that 6, 7, 8 points that I mentioned, number one is please keep your records. And number two, speak with your wealth advisor, financial advisor, whomever that is, and keep those records. What is the average performance of your investment fund, investment accounts, investment property? Number three, it make sure that you understand the legal framework, which state you're in, and how it will impact the calculations for forensic accountant if you have to go through the divorce really soon. And number four, it's basically make sure, and it's kind of like very, very important one, is to make sure that you understand really the value of money, which $10,000 can become like millions of dollars in 15, 20 years, right? So you make sure you distinguish like what was before marriage, what was during marriage, what happened with that $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is. When it's the time, how much, at which interest rate, and again, during what period of time. As interesting as it might sound a little complicated with time value of money, I just want to make sure that you see it and feel it's actually simple. The formula itself can be calculated by the forensic professional and make sure that it's, just accurately reviewed and calculated. But the inputs that you give to the professional, again, just to stress that when exactly happened, at which rate potentially you could have invested or you already invested, during which period of time. Are we speaking about the year? Are we speaking about 20 years? Or are we speaking about 15 years? And again, where? So which state, which country did you move? Or you didn't move, but it was an investment property somewhere globally. And the biggest one, also number 5, is to make sure that you explain, you educate the forensic accountant in terms of the bigger picture of your life. Your life is changing. It's a very stressful event, the divorce. And many psychologists compare it to very, very negative other events that people can experience potentially. It is like such a big change and milestone, negative one. Some people, like after it's done, they see it that was a relief. But again, like during that period of time, I hear from my clients, we're like at the bottom of it. We're at the bottom of emotional stress and everything. And it's like, how can you lift up that person? And any forensic accountant, it's basically working with matrimonial, with divorcing clients. It's usually like some part of the psychology is involved. But lifting up is very hard when there is no records, when there is like no information, and then there's like always that would have been instead of like the actual factual components of cash in, cash out, bigger picture of life. If I would have been my own client and I started interviewing with myself, with like one Maria's forensic accountant, another Maria's the client. So that client will always say, can I tell you about my life? Can I walk you through everything? Can I explain to you who I am, who is at that point in time is my spouse, what we do, what we invest in, what are our matrimonial together assets, what happened before, any kids together, any kids before the marriage, who are other family, what is the family dynamics, family members involved, countries where we would live or fly to, states. Just the bigger the picture is, the better the outcome will be for forensic accountant calculation. Again, the goal is to tune it to that level that is really hard to even opine on or say anything that, okay, that just doesn't make sense. Cash in, cash out, support for that, bank statements, going as far as possible. Hopefully, after this podcast, you can just save a little bit more, go through. I know we're all sometimes very lazy and we don't want to save those records unless there's so much needed. Conducting that little click is challenging, but I would like to make sure that after this conversation, you reach out to your financial advisor, wealth advisor, whomever, you save those available records, at least one record per year, one bank statement per year that are right now on your bank accounts available in that history level. Usually there's like one for the annual where you can basically see all the transactions for the year, or if not available, then at least like the last month. Don't forget about credit cards, about anything that you use for payment. Again, cash in, I always mention that as a many times like repetitional. I repeat that, but it's cash in, cash out. It doesn't matter if it's a checking or if it's a debit, credit, whatever it is. And an investment, it's also, you need to deposit cash first to that investment account, that the investment account, whomever you use, like invests in something, right? Like whatever investment that is, you need to make sure that initially that investment came from somewhere, unless we're speaking about some fraudulent actions. And that's another story, my other clients and other work I do. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully that was at least a little bit helpful. At TSENU Consulting, we do also spend, just even if it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, we do review like very high level, and we work on not only with clients with whom like who already go into the divorce. We also work with those ones who just hypothetically, I have some women in my network, executives, we just want to know like how much it is, like theoretically, if the divorce would have happened. Again, you don't have to. Hopefully you can just follow certain guidelines that I mentioned and it will be helpful. And again, I wish you would never reach out to me or to my colleagues at TSENU Consulting, but if you do, we're here to help. Thank you for listening. Hope to record more on this topic. Again, my name is Maria Tsennykh. I'm the founder and managing partner of TSENU Consulting in New York and globally. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe. Reviews are very helpful. If you'd like to get in touch with me, go to www.tsenu.global and book a call today.